Picture yourself as a crow, just chilling, doing your crow thing, stealing French fries, judging folks from power lines, maybe plotting something totally sinister, who knows? Then, out of nowhere, this massive, strange, two-legged beast reaches down and untangles a piece of plastic that was trapped around your leg. How do you process that moment? Does it click? Do you feel anything? Do you fly off thinking, that was a close one, thanks, giant hairless ape? Or is it absolutely nothing, just noise in the void? That big question, whether wild animals actually get when a human is saving them, seems like a simple yes or no, but the truth is actually one of the coolest rabbit holes you can stumble into. By the time we finish, I promise, you will never see wild animals the same way again. Let's go. First, let's clear up something huge. Animals are not stupid. I know that sounds incredibly obvious, but for a really long time, centuries, actually, the mainstream scientific consensus was that animals are just biological machines. They react to stimuli. They do not feel. They do not comprehend anything. They just react. This mindset was so common that researchers actually used a rule called Morgan's canon, created in the late 1800s, which essentially stated, never assume a complex mind to an animal if a basic reflex can explain the action. Basically, if a dog looks guilty after ruining your couch, don't claim it feels guilty. Just say it learned that when you look at them like that, bad things happen. Keep it simple, keep it purely mechanical. And look, that rule has its place. Science needs to be cautious. We absolutely should not project human feelings onto everything that moves. But here is the problem. We overcorrected big time for decades. The idea of animals having deep inner lives, making choices, understanding their world, reading social dynamics, all of it was dismissed. It was labeled as unscientific, naive, almost embarrassing to bring up in serious academic circles. But then the real science started rolling in, and turns out animals are doing way more than we ever thought, like a lot more, in ways that should completely change how we connect with the wild world around us. Let us start with one of the most famous, well-documented cases in the entire field: dolphins. We have dozens of verified accounts, not just rumors from random people on social media, but solid, studied, peer-reviewed cases of wild dolphins actively seeking help from human divers. One of the most famous happened off the coast of Hawaii in 2013. A wild bottlenose dolphin swam up to a group of divers during a night dive. The dolphin had a fishing hook stuck in its pectoral fin with a long line wrapped around it, heavily limiting its movement. And here is what gets you. The dolphin did not panic. It did not flee. It swam straight to one specific diver, Keller Laros, and stayed still while he worked to pull out the hook. When the line was tangled so badly that made it tough to reach, the dolphin actually shifted and spun around to give the diver easier access. Think about that for a second. This was a wild creature, untrained, not bribed with tasty treats, completely unfamiliar with this human, just a dolphin with a massive problem who saw us and made a conscious choice. Maybe this human can help solve this. That is not instinct. That is not some programmed robotic reaction. That is genuine logical reasoning, a clear form of purpose, a silent realization of, I cannot fix this alone. Perhaps you can. And it actually worked. The scuba diver pulled out the hook. The dolphin swam off, but lingered right beside the rescue team for a few more minutes. Did it comprehend what just happened? Did it feel immense relief? We will never truly know, but the actual action is absolutely mind-blowing. And this is not just a fluke. Similar stories pop up all over the globe, spanning species and lasting decades. There is something deep going on that demands our full attention. Now, let's look at an even more shocking case. Ravens and crows. These blackbirds are brilliantly, scarily smart. Honestly, we are looking at creatures that solve complex, multi-step puzzles, craft tools, plan for tomorrow, remember unique human faces, and, get this, they hold serious grudges Not metaphorical, but real. Long-term, community-wide vendettas. Resentments. Scientists at the University of Washington ran a study where researchers wore creepy masks while catching crows, then later strolled around campus in completely friendly masks or that scary trapping mask at times. Those crows did not just remember the hostile face, they actually gathered other birds to attack that mask. Crows that weren't even there during the initial catcher would swoop in and dive bomb that mask because they had heard about it. They talk. Crows literally gossip about you, building reputation sheets on humans and sharing them. They keep updating them too, but the flip side is just as fascinating and rarely ever discussed. Crows remember kindness too. People who regularly feed them report getting little gifts like shiny buttons, small shards of glass, left right where the food normally goes. The crow isn't just taking it, is giving back. It has a social map that includes you. And within that world, you share a connection built on mutual exchange. Now think about a rescue scenario. When a person frees a crow from a trap, can that bird connect that entire experience, that specific human, that exact action, with a positive memory? From what we know about crow intelligence, the answer seems to be yes. Not through words and deep reflection, like we analyze our days, but in a deeply coded, behaviorally real way that directly guides their next move. This means when a crow lets you assist, truly lets you, staying calm, watching you instead of flying away, it is probably running the numbers, a lightning-fast cost-benefit analysis, inside a brain no bigger than a walnut that beats out most corporate office algorithms in raw social smarts. Let us pause here and talk to the doubters among us, because that is a fair point, and it deserves respect. Maybe the bird is not understanding the concept of help. Maybe it is just completely exhausted. Maybe it is in so much pain or distress that it cannot even run. Maybe it has simply run out of choices, and being near a human becomes meaningless compared to the highly urgent bodily crisis it is facing. That is a valid scientific point. It definitely applies to some cases, but this is where things get complicated and fascinating. Scientists studying how animals think have discovered something they call prosocial behavior, meaning helping others. That goes way beyond basic survival, and it shows up across different species, hinting that something far deeper is going on under the surface. For example, elephants have been seen helping each other out of mud pits, using their trunks to lift fallen companions, and in some remarkable, recorded cases, they even approach humans who seemed hurt or totally defenseless. There are stories from rangers in African parks about herds of wild elephants stopping near an injured person, moving very gently around them instead of trampling them, and sometimes even staying right there until the person was finally found by others. In several different regions, elephants have actually been seen gently covering up the bodies of dead humans using branches and leaves. It is the same mourning ritual they show for their own dead. That is not a reflex, and it is not simple survival. This is something that looks remarkably like genuine empathy, reaching right across the species barrier to animals they have every evolutionary reason to stay away from. This scientific term is cross-species empathy. It is real, it is studied, and it forces us to completely rethink the idea that animals are just reacting to stimuli without feeling any real emotions inside. But let's get back to the core question, because knowing that wild animals can feel things versus knowing they truly comprehend cooperation, well, those are two completely different things, and this distinction really matters. Take this study that tried to draw that very line. Japanese researchers set up a series of cognitive experiments with wild capuchin monkeys, incredibly smart, small primates often studied in intelligence tests. They created scenarios where an actor would either actively help or block a monkey's attempt to get food. The capuchins observed these scenes from a safe distance, just watching quietly, and then they got a choice: take treats from the helpful person or the unhelpful one. Almost always, they chose to take food from the friendly person. But here's the part that is truly wild. When the monkeys saw a person being rude or difficult to a totally different third party, not themselves or anyone they knew, just some stranger. They still later refused to take food from them. They were not just tracking who was nice or mean to them personally, they tracked whether that person was generally decent. They were making moral judgments about people based on witnessed actions toward others. Imagine a monkey just sitting there watching you interact with a stranger, deciding what sort of person you are, and storing that knowledge away for down the road. Wild animals observe us way more closely than we watch them, and they are drawing their own conclusions. Okay, now we must discuss something that often gets glossed over in those heartwarming accounts of wildlife encounters: the real role of extreme stress and this thing called tonic immobility. When a wild creature is caught, trapped, hurt, or otherwise helpless, its system instantly floods with cortisol and adrenaline. Its entire nervous system kicks right into maximum survival mode. And in that state, one of the absolute weirdest things can happen, and this is actually well documented by wildlife rescue experts: an involuntary behavioral shutdown known as tonic immobility. It is a deeply ancient survival mechanism. The creature freezes completely. It goes totally limp and still, and to the untrained eye, it looks remarkably like cooperation or calm or even trust. This is incredibly important because it means we really must be extremely careful when reading a wild animal's quiet state as understanding or acceptance. Wildlife rescuers, the actual people who literally spend their whole lives doing this work, know all about this deep difference, and they will tell you that there is a massive, real difference between a creature in tonic immobility and one that has truly calmed down. With a truly relaxed animal, the breathing softens and muscle tension fades. Their eyes change completely. The animal might actually lean into you instead of just surviving it. One raptor rescue expert with over 15 years on the job shared this story. She has worked with birds that, over weeks and weeks of recovery, who, right when they are ready for release, will tilt their heads toward the sound of her footsteps specifically, not toward strangers or even other workers at the facility. Only her, not because she was bribing them with food during their visits, but because she consistently represented safety to them. Pure safety, predictability, calm, the lack of threat. Something shifted in how those wild birds mapped that human presence, and that mental map practically signals to them that this is not danger. Could it be the complete opposite? Now, whether you call that trust, learned association, or something else, we know it is behaviorally real and totally distinct from just freezing up. Now, let's look at a case that stops everyone cold. Humpback whales. In December 2011, a massive humpback was found tangled in thick crab trap ropes near San Francisco. The lines were cutting deep into its flesh, wrapped across its mouth and pectoral fins. It had struggled desperately for what seemed like endless hours. It was completely exhausted. A rescue team was sent. What followed was a rescue operation lasting over an hour. The divers, incredibly small next to the beast, totally vulnerable, swam around the giant creature carefully, working with sharp knives to cut through thick ropes without hurting the whale. More, the whale stayed still, a 50-foot, 50-ton beast that could have crushed every diver present with just one accidental twitch. It could have panicked, causing devastating harm to itself and the whole crew, yet it stayed still for an hour while total strangers worked around its body. And then, as the last rope was finally cut, the whale did not simply vanish into the deep. It circled back. It approached every single diver slowly and very deliberately. One diver described being nudged gently and firmly, a touch that felt intentional rather than an accident. Another said the whale positioned itself so its massive eye was right at eye level, just floating there, staring, making direct eye contact with an animal with an eye the size of a grapefruit. Now, marine biologists have debated this incredible encounter deeply. Was the whale just adjusting its posture after being trapped for hours, or was it studying these weird, wetsuit-wearing figures that had been buzzing around? Maybe Those are totally fair theories, but here's the part that's tough to explain. The whale actually told divers apart. It chose to approach each one. It did not act the same toward the ocean around it, it acted differently toward the exact humans who had worked so hard to free it. That is not accidental behavior. That points to something bigger, some sort of mental processing, some kind of awareness of what went down and who was responsible. Let's take a step back and look at the evolutionary puzzle, since that is what actually ties it all together. Why do wild creatures even have the ability to spot friendly gestures from us? Biologically, it makes zero sense, because for most of our shared past, a person approaching a wild beast meant only a few possible things, and absolutely none of them were good. Hunting, trapping, or cages. The urge to run from us is ancient and hardwired deep inside. So where does this curiosity come from? Part of it comes down to how social brains work across different species. It is a shared mental blueprint. Animals that survive in tight-knit groups, like dolphins, elephants, monkeys, crows, and wolves, must read intentions constantly. They have to figure out if another creature coming near them wants to groom them or challenge them. They need understand the hierarchies, alliances, threats, and support. They must build working models of other minds, that cognitive architecture, the inner machinery that decodes behavioral cues and maps them to internal states and future actions, easily transfers over to humans because it is highly adaptable. Evolution built a tool for reading social intention. That tool works on creatures the animal never actually evolved alongside, because the basic behaviors, approaching without a threat posture, slow movements, soft sounds that don't signal aggression, translate the same way. No matter the species, a dolphin reading a diver's body language is not doing anything miraculous. It is doing something quite ordinary, reading social cues and applying them to an unusual subject, which brings up an idea that's both simple and deeply profound. Wild animals may understand human kindness, not because they know what humans are, but because they recognize what kindness looks like, period. In anyone, in any creature, the signal is the signal, no matter whose body it comes from. Now, let us spend some time on something those feel-good compilation clips never show: the failures, the limits, and cases where it fails, because these are just as scientifically vital, and they show us something real about how complex this picture truly is. Wildlife rehabilitators will tell you plainly some animals never settle in human care, ever. They remain on high alert from intake to release. They never show any behavioral signs of recognizing the help being provided. They bolt out of the crate on release day without a backward glance, and that is exactly, and that makes sense, right? It's a wild animal doing exactly what it's built to do. But is that because these creatures lack the mental wiring to recognize our friendly intentions, or does the sheer trauma of capture completely overwhelm their capacity for deeper thinking? Or is it just personality quirks, the same kind of differences that make some people open and trusting while others are guarded? Honestly, we just don't know, and anyone claiming they do is totally oversimplifying things. There's also a darker reality that keeps animal rescuers up at night. Some creatures get too comfortable. They start connecting people with safety, food, and a total absence of danger. Then they take that memory back out to the woods, where it leaves them dangerously exposed, vulnerable to folks who don't mean them well, changing in ways that severely slash their odds of survival. That is why real wildlife rescue work requires deliberate, careful shielding from human contact, feeding them from behind screens, using hand puppets for some species instead of bare hands, and minimizing the creatures' exposure to our voices, faces, and smell. You must help without letting the beast realize a human is the one saving them. You must show kindness without ever revealing yourself. It sounds like an absurd philosophical puzzle, yet it is just a normal Tuesday for an animal rescuer. Let's bring this conversation back to Earth, to something highly personal. Why does this question matter so much? Why do viral clips of this get watched at 2 in the morning and shared silently? because the actual share is the comment, it's because it hits something incredibly deep within our souls. Think about real connection, like weather. Kindness has a currency that crosses those barriers we assume are absolute. We want to believe that goodness is readable, that it actually translates, and that something in this vast universe, even a creature with a brain the size of a walnut, or one the size of a watermelon inside a skull as big as a car, can feel the difference between help and getting hurt, and the science, though imperfect and incomplete as it always is, points toward an evolutionary direction that is truly astonishing. It might actually be true not everywhere, and not with every animal in every single situation, nor does it map cleanly onto our own emotional categories or movie-style rescue stories, but in a real, measurable, reproducible way. Wild animals actually show sensitivity to our good intentions. They actually calibrate social trust. Based on experience, they carry the memory of kindness in ways that shape their behavior long after the moment is gone. The crow remembers your face for years. The dolphin shifts its body to help you help it. The capuchin monkey rejects food from someone it saw being mean to a stranger. The whale circles back and makes eye contact. None of that is nothing. None of it is coincidence. None of that is biology just being accidentally poetic. This is intelligence. This is social awareness. This is something that doesn't even have a simple name yet. Why? Because we're still learning to talk about minds that are not human. So, what does this mean for you, practically? Today, every interaction you have with a wild animal builds on that animal's mental database of what we humans are, and those datasets are not private. They spread through corvid warning networks, like elephant herds, memories, or through behavioral modeling of young animals copying adults, sharing generations of accumulated experience. Creatures who lived here long before us, and who are paying much closer attention to us than we do to them. But when you do stop to help, when you make that small, inconvenient effort to nudge a slow turtle off the road, or call a local shelter about an injured bird, or slow your car for an animal crossing, you take a quick moment to see this animal in front of you as a living being with its own deep inner world. And that actually matters, not in some abstract, feel-good way, but in a real way. It echoes through invisible social networks, linking wild species whose incredible cognition we are only just starting to understand. Think about it. Somewhere out there, a crow is watching you, running facial recognition software it developed entirely on its own, through daily experience, archiving you in a mental folder, deciding what kind of person you are. You might as well make it a good report.